background. Things Fall Apart has become one of the most important books in African literature. Selling over 8 million copies around the world, it has been translated into 50 languages, making Achebe the most translated African writer of all time.
What brings you here so early as to make you leave so angry and so unhappy?
Who no kind of father has made my money a greater burden than I came with.
How?
He owes me 10 scores of cowries and will never pay.
Father, debts and debts and debts every day. I can't understand. We arranged to go to the farm early in the morning, and here you are again as the flute, as if it's the only thing that matters in this world.
Who gave you the authority to speak to your father like that? Who are you?
Father, you must stop all this and pay your debts. It is becoming a disgrace to my honor and hard work.
Shut up! Shut up, Okonkwo. Have I ever asked you to pay off my debts for me?
And so what?
You ask me, so what? You?
Flute and debts every day, nothing else. How can I respect you? What do you want here?
The white man whose power you know too well has ordered this meeting to stop.
Go back and tell him that this is our land.
The meeting must stop.
I said go back. Go back before you regret why you came to Umuofia.
If you don't move.
There. Yes. Okonkwo. Okonkwo. Perhaps your men can help us bring him down.
Why can you not bring him down yourself?
It is against our custom. It is an abomination for a man to take his own life. It is an offense against the earth. And if any man does it, nobody in his clan would bury him. And that is why I ask you that you bring him down. Because you are stronger.
You can see Achebe as an elephant. It depends on which part of his body you are feeling. Because he's such a gigantic elephant that it is difficult for anybody to simply summarize the Achebe. So you better tell me which aspect of Achebe you want to know. Achebe did groundwork for all literary works in Nigeria when he wrote Things Fall Apart. Is the foundation. And I'm happy and I thank God that that work came out when it came out. Because most of the Igbo traditions, Igbo concepts, Igbo cosmology, Igbo metaphysics, these are all embedded in Achebe's literature. The arrow of God. If you want to know Igbo man, read these books. Where now do you see people enjoying moonlight? Where now do you see people enjoying the dances? But if you want to know Igbo man, go back to these books. They can never die. I don't know any other African literature that has been translated into over 12 foreign languages. Achebe's work, yes, is there. and is still being sought after.
I just can't see who has yet superseded Achebe. You know, in his own kind of writing, which is fiction writing. I don't know anybody on the African continent who has done that. He has told the story of our lives in various ways. You know, the younger people now don't, perhaps some of them don't know what that means, and that would be the fault of those who teach literature in the universities, particularly, or even in the secondary schools. You see, there's a deadening loss of interest in literature, which I find sad. You know, you go to our local secondary school here, the number of students who take literature in the school set examinations and so on, the number is too poor. I don't know why. But why any person should not read Things Fall Apart, which tells us where we were before the white man came and what we were, with all the imperfections of our society, all captured so beautifully there.
Achebe was promoted at the MBS and put in charge of the network's Eastern region coverage. He moved to Enugu and began to work on his administrative duties. There, he met a woman named Christy Okoli, who had grown up in the area and joined the MBS staff when he arrived. They first conversed when she brought to his attention a pay discrepancy. A friend of hers found that although they had been hired simultaneously, Christy had been rated lower and offered a lower wage. Sent to the hospital for an appendectomy soon afterwards, she was pleasantly surprised when Achebe visited her with gifts and magazines. Achebe and Okoli grew closer in the following years, and on September 10, 1961, were married in the Chapel of Resurrection on the campus of the University of Ibadan. Christy Achebe has described their marriage as one of trust and mutual understanding. Some tension arose early in their union due to conflicts about attention and communication. However, as their relationship matured, husband and wife made efforts to adapt to one another. Their first child, a daughter named Chinelo, was born on July 11, 1962. They had a son, Ikechukwu, on December 3, 1964, and another boy named Chidi on May 24, 1967. After the Biafran War, the Achebes had another daughter on March 7, 1970, named Nwando. In 1960, while they were still dating, Achebe dedicated to Christy Okoli his second novel, No Longer at Ease. It is about a civil servant who is embroiled in the corruption of Lagos. The protagonist is Obi, grandson of Things Fall Apart's main character, Okonkwo. Drawing on his time in the city, Achebe writes about Obi's experiences in Lagos to reflect the challenges facing a new generation on the threshold of Nigerian independence. Later that year, Achebe was awarded a Rockefeller Fellowship for 6 months of travel, which he called the first important part of my writing career. Achebe set out for a tour of East Africa.
Chinua Achebe is an intellectual firebrand in Igbo land. His own field is in the intellectual world. His writings giving inspiration and so forth, and being critical of the wrongs of the society. That was the area in which he showed his own nationalism. Of course, he showed his nationalism by continuing even to protest.
When he returned to Nigeria, Achebe was promoted at the MBS to the position of Director of External Broadcasting. One of his first duties was to help create the Voice of Nigeria network. The station broadcast its first transmission on New Year's Day 1962 and worked to maintain an objective perspective during the turbulent era immediately following independence. In 1962, Achebe attended a conference of African writers in English at the Makerere University College in Kampala, Uganda. He met with important literary figures from around the continent and the world, including Ghanaian poet Kofi Awono, Nigerian playwright and poet Wole Soyinka, and US poet-author Langston Hughes. Among the topics of discussion was an attempt to determine whether the term African literature ought to include work from the diaspora or solely that writing composed by people living within the continent itself. Achebe indicated that it was not a very significant question, and that scholars would do well to wait until a body of work were large enough to judge. Writing about the conference in several journals, Achebe hailed it as a milestone for the literature of Africa and highlighted the importance of community among isolated voices on the continent and beyond. While at Makerere, Achebe was asked to read a novel written by a student, James Ngugi, later known as Ngugi wa Thiong'o, called Weep Not Child. Impressed, he sent it to Alan Hill at Heinemann, which published it 2 years later to coincide with its paperback line of books from African writers. Hill indicated this was to remedy a situation where British publishers regarded West Africa only as a place where you sold books. Achebe was chosen to be general editor of the African Writers series, which became a significant force in bringing post-colonial literature from Africa to the rest of the world. As these works became more widely available, reviews and essays about African literature, especially from Europe, began to flourish. Bristling against the commentary flooding his home country, Achebe published an essay titled Where Angels Fear to Tread in the December 1962 issue of Nigeria magazine. In it, he distinguished between the hostile critic, entirely negative, the amazed critic, entirely positive, and the conscious critic who sees a balance. He lashed out at those who critiqued African writers from the outside, saying, and I quote, "No man can understand another whose language he does not speak, and language here does not mean simply words, but a man's entire worldview," unquote.
What is it actually you are doing? You are doing a book.
We are making a video documentary on Chinua Achebe as a person and his person in relation to Things Fall Apart and other books which he has written. So we know that as a professor of theater arts, you have some theatrical intellectualism that you can infuse into this documentary on Achebe as a person. So the first shot is, who do you think Achebe is?
The Colossus.
Achebe's third book, Arrow of God, was published in 1964. Like its predecessors, it explores the intersections of Igbo tradition and European Christianity. Set in the village of Omuaro at the start of the 20th century, the novel tells the story of Ezulu, a chief priest of Ulu. Shocked by the power of British intervention in the area, Ezulu orders his son to learn the foreigner's secret. As with Okonkwo in Things Fall Apart and Obi in No Longer at Ease, Ezulu is consumed by the resulting tragedy.
It is difficult for us to talk about best when we talk about Achebe because each novel has a unique contribution to scholarship and to the world of scholarship. Well, Things Fall Apart has, it shows us really that we can cultivate our own type of English and that it is not wrong for us to articulate a kind of English that would enable us say what we want to say without causing the conflict which unnecessary transliteration may impose on creative writing. You see, so as far as that work is concerned, it tells a story, a timeless story, and the story is told in a good language without checkered or contorted diction. And it deals with, it wrestles with the concept of man in society. You know, with the result that you pick a significant or even an insignificant part of the novel, you develop it. It becomes a source of a very serious inquest into the psyche of the life in this world. You see, though the setting may be rural, but the issues are portrayed obviously contemporary and universal. And one thing really, many people, if you talk about the impact, one thing many people have gained from
writers is the use of language, appropriate language that communicates without harassing the reader. The use of proverbs, which is, like Achebe says, the palm oil with which words are eaten. You know? And you find out that it is after Achebe that people, that creative writers, started imbibing the concept of what you might call proverbs, use of proverbs and aphorisms in their writing. You see? So, and you also discover that, like Achebe said, we had a past. You know, in Money Yet on Creation Day, he said he wants his people to know that despite their imperfections, their past was not one long night of savagery from which the Europeans, acting on God's behalf, delivered them. So you'll find out that it's a loaded novel, loaded with different kinds of socio-cultural situations. But it is really, it might be the first of Achebe, but I kind of have a kind of, well, likeness for Hour of God. To me, Hour of God is a masterpiece in the sense that it deals with what Things Fall Apart fails to do, you know. Some people may call it a trilogy, because stemming from Things Fall Apart through Hour of God to A Man of the People, sorry, to No Longer At Ease, sorry. But then, they can be seen as individual novels. If you follow strictly the definition of a trilogy. But that is beside the point. The point is that Hour of God addresses an eternal issue, psychological issue, and deals mainly with Achebe's unique use of drama. So that was why I found it the most appropriate to dramatize during the Achebe Symposium. If you take a look at the title I gave it, When the Arrow Rebounds, yes, you know, you find out that that singular statement, you know, a God